Greetings! So you probably heard about Xexa's new PP change proposal that aims to balance difficulty spikes and lengths at the same time. However, all the codes and numbers are pretty confusing and some PP changes in specific maps don't make any sense. Yet a lot of people are praising the proposal, so how does that all add up? Well, let's dissect what exactly the code does without going too deep into any technicalities. Everything should make sense by the end of the video. Before we start, I should probably clarify that this is only a proposal and will be probably tweaked in the future. It might not even get implemented, so no need to start getting too excited or worked up about this so-called length change. This video is only meant to clear things up, for now. So first we kind of have to look at how the PP system processes the objects in maps. Unfortunately, the PP system cannot just take the entirety of the map and process it as a whole, so it has to use something called chunking. You might ask that, Vato, what exactly is chunking? Well, chunking divides up the map into 400 millisecond segments and rates the strain in each of those intervals. You might have seen a few Discord bots, those show a difficulty graph when you link a map, which is basically made up of the strain chunks. Yeah, Vato, but what is strain? Okay, so strain is kind of like a balloon. If you blow it from below, it will go up. But after a short while it will reach its peak, and it will stay at the same height. If your blow weakens, the balloon will descend, but not as fast as if you had stopped blowing completely. If you start blowing harder, it will go higher. Similarly to this comparison, if the map has some difficult jumps, the strain will go up. But the same jumps can only get the strain so high, so you will need bigger jumps to get it higher. If the jumps get smaller, it will slowly decrease the strain accordingly. Once the map gets to the calm part, it will quickly, but not instantly, decrease. Now take a picture of the balloon's position every 400 milliseconds, and that is basically strain chunking. The position of the balloon is the strain, and the picture is the chunk. On an unrelated note, to get the star rating of a map, the system arranges these positions similarly like your top plays are arranged. The highest is weighted the most, then it starts getting weighted less and less. This is why the Unforgiving isn't 20 stars, and this is why I am not a 3-digit despite having 1300 PP scores. Haha. Now since we know how chunks and strain works, we can move on to aggregated difficulty. Don't worry, it sounds difficult, but it's not really. Once you have your chunks, the system adds up all those chunks, which ends up being the aggregated difficulty of the map. Not to be confused with the star rating, which weights each chunk similarly to how top plays are weighted. Please note that both aim and speed has its own aggregated difficulty, just like how they have their own strain values. Combining the aim and the speed aggregated difficulty will result in the final aggregated difficulty of the map. Since longer maps have more chunks, obviously they will get more buffs in this update. However, this is where the difficulty spikes come into play. You see, if you take the same diff spike and place it in a TV size map and a marathon map, then the marathon map will get less length bonus from it than the TV sized map. This is because the same diff spike will affect the aggregated difficulty less in the marathon map than in the TV size map. Basically, think of the diff spike as pissing in a pool versus pissing in your roommate's milk carton. In a pool it spreads out so much that nobody will notice, while in the milk your roommate will definitely realize something is fishy. What? Bad comparison? Okay, how about this one? In 2 deciliters of water, half a deciliter of syrup is going to make the drink sweeter than if you had poured the same half a deciliter syrup in a liter of water. Less water means the drink will be sweeter. As such, the diff spike will make up a bigger percentage of the map in shorter maps than in marathons. A lot of people were confused because this supposed length fix changed the length bonus when Hard Rock was added to the same map. Sometimes even nerfing marathon maps, like Honesty, which wouldn't make any sense if this update was really a length buff. But this proposal has another major component, which is much more valuable and important in my opinion. Let's talk about the difficulty spike nerf and how mods relate to them. The most interesting thing about the difficulty spike nerf, which is included in the length bonus, is that Hard Rock can actually make a significant difference. This is because smaller circles will amplify the difficulty of any pattern, meaning easier patterns will only get slightly harder, while the hardest patterns will be significantly harder. This is even more so on space streams. The smaller circles from hard rock can turn an interlinked stream into a space stream, bumping up its speed values. Oh yeah, to those who are new around here, space streams actually count towards speed instead of aim, even more than actually fast streams, so... Of course, smaller circles also mean that already spaced streams will become more spaced. Most of the time, smaller circles on space streams make much more difference in difficulty than in jumps, making space stream maps suffer more nerf in this proposal when adding hard rock. While hard rock increases the gap between the diffspike and the rest of the map, easy makes the circles bigger, so it evens out the difficulty throughout the map. The complete opposite of hard rock. The diffspikes will be much easier due to the bigger circles, while the rest of the map will only get slightly easier. This means that the diffspike nerf would be much weaker on the same map when adding easy than with no mod or hard rock. So basically, this is an indirect easy buff and hard rock nerf. Right now, the diffspike nerf makes up a significant part of this length change. This is why if the diffspike is extreme enough, like really extreme, the length bonus could be completely counterweighted by the diffspike nerf. A lot of long diffspike maps those lose PP like Honesty is the result of this. They would get some buffs due to their length, but the nerf to their diffspikes is just too strong. So okay, earlier in this video we talked about how the Unforgiving isn't 20 stars, but this proposal would buff length, so will it be? No, silly. Clever boy Xexar included a logarithmic element in his code, which means after a certain point the increase in the bonus will be negligible. The length change is only volatile at the start, then it slowly falls off. That should cover the theoretical explanation of this proposal. Let's move on to the practical results now. Which maps are getting buffed and nerfed exactly according to this proposal? Well, if a map is consistently hard in both aim and speed according to the PP system, this is important, then this update will definitely give a huge buff to them, even if they aren't marathons. Due to the logarithmic component, extremely long, consistent maps aren't going to be the biggest winners of this update. Rather, maps between the 3 and the 4 minute range like Darkfly Dreamer, Egoistic Shooter and Demetori Shoujo Satori. Also, it's worth mentioning that the gap between normal and hard rock plays on the same maps are going to be somewhat less. So a shitek hard rock full combo might not always worth it compared to a higher normal FC. As previously said, hard rock unintentionally create a bigger gap between the diff spikes and the rest of the map. It doesn't even need to be a diff spike because any difficulty difference is amplified by the smaller circles. However, since the accuracy is untouched by this proposal, it shouldn't be that big of a deal for accuracy players those use hard rock a lot. For those who use hard rock with bad accuracy, it's kind of a bigger deal. But it all depends what kind of maps you are playing. The greatest nerfs will be on maps where the majority of the PP comes from either aim diff spikes or speed diff spikes, because aggregated difficulty considers both aim and speed. If only one aspect has a diff spike while the other is consistent and equally difficult, then the nerf to one aspect won't be that great. However, if one aspect barely gives any PP while the other has tremendous diff spike, well, I'm sorry for your loss. But it's for the better. Personally, I think the concept of this update is great. The exact numbers can still be tweaked a bit, like how speed diff spikes seem to be nerfed more than jump diff spikes, but the main idea behind it is definitely on the right track. It tries to deal with the difficulty spike issue, which is one of the biggest problems in the game. It also nerfs extremely short maps without compromising low difficulty longer maps, like the object count change would have. However, it is certainly true that some maps will be shifted towards the wrong direction, but that's not exactly the proposal's fault. Well, not the concept behind it at least. The hardest part of developing PP is actually working out the code and the math behind the already existing ideas. It would be very convenient if we could just buff alt maps or reading, but without being able to attribute their difficulty to cold hard numbers, trying to fix them with band-aid solution would do more harm than good, especially on the long run. This update would be only one step forward, but still, it would be a step ahead. Of course there will be maps those are unjustly nerfed or buffed due to this and many other updates in the future, but the community has to understand that even if certain maps give just about the right amount of PP in the current system, it can still be for all the wrong reasons, which impacts a lot more maps negatively, contributing to why the PP system is so bad in the first place. As long as we are making direct steps forward, eventually, those scores will worth as much as they should. Just be a little more patient, will you? If the community held back a completely legitimate update just because it changed some hyped maps the wrong way, then we will never move forward with the PP system. And that's not what we want. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.